The alarm bells rang across Harmony Prime, the biggest space station in known space. The sound echoed through metal halls where beings from 100 different worlds worked together. Today was different, though. Today, fear filled the air like smoke. Ambassador Crix Tall from the Zephyrian Empire checked her breathing mask for the third time in 10 minutes. The methane mix in her suit felt wrong, but she knew it was just her nerves. Around the great meeting hall, other ambassadors did the same nervous checks. The Vorthan delegate's crystal body hummed with worry as he tested his pressure suit. The Altarian representative's graceful form swayed as she adjusted her atmosphere controls. Everyone was scared. Everyone was worried. And it was all because of one species. Humans. The emergency session had been called after reports came in from the outer colonies. Reports that made no sense. Reports that kept the Senate's best scientists awake at night. Humans were living on worlds that should have killed them. Not just surviving, but thriving. Building cities. Raising families. Acting like it was normal. Senator Vex 9 from the Kavani Republic spoke first. His voice came through the translation system with mechanical precision. Fellow beings of the Senate, we face a crisis unlike any in our recorded history. The species known as humans appear to possess biological capabilities that challenge everything we know about life itself. The hall fell silent, except for the hum of life support systems. Every being present needed those systems to stay alive. In the station's environment, every being except one small group sitting in the observer section, the human diplomatic team, sat quietly in simple clothes. No breathing gear, no protective suits, no environmental controls. They looked comfortable, almost bored. One of them, a woman with short brown hair, was reading something on a small device. Another, a man with graying temples, sipped from a cup of what the humans called coffee. The evidence is disturbing, Senator Vex 9 continued. Human colonies have been established on Kepler 442b, where the atmospheric acid concentration would dissolve organic matter in minutes. They have settlements on Proxima Centauri C, where radiation levels exceed emergency protocols by 300%. Most shocking of all, they have built a city on Wolf 359b, a world we classified as uninhabitable due to toxic gas levels that would kill any known life form. Murmurs of concern rippled through the assembly. The Turellian delegate's shell clicked. Nervously, the Zarathan ambassador's gills fluttered, despite his breathing apparatus. Yet our observers report that humans walk these worlds without protection. Children play in environments that would require our most advanced hazmat suits. Adults work in conditions that would trigger immediate evacuation protocols for any of our species. Ambassador Amy Rodriguez, head of the human diplomatic mission, looked up from her reading. She seemed puzzled by all the attention. In her simple blue dress and comfortable shoes, she looked nothing like the biological weapon the Senate feared her to be. The reports kept coming. On Gliese 667 cc, human miners worked in caves filled with gases that would poison a Corvani in seconds. On HD 40307G, human farmers grew crops in soil, so toxic it would burn through standard protective equipment. On Kepler 62F, human fishermen caught food from oceans that would melt most known materials. How is this possible? Asked the representative from the Crystalline Confederacy. Her voice rang like broken glass through the translation system. Our best scientists cannot explain these observations. Either our instruments are wrong, or these humans possess abilities beyond our understanding. Dr. Zixvel, the Senate's chief, xenobiologist, stepped forward. His Corvani form was completely enclosed in a research suit designed for the most dangerous environments. I have studied every known form of life in the galaxy, he said. Nothing prepares us for what we observe. In humans, they appear to be immune to radiation, poison, extreme temperatures, and atmospheric conditions that would be fatal to any other species. The fear in the room was growing. Representatives whispered among themselves through their communication. Systems. The implications were terrible to consider. If humans could survive anywhere, what did that mean for the rest of the galaxy? If they could live on any world, how could they be stopped if they chose to expand? We must consider the possibility, said Senator Theises from the Altarian Collective, that we are dealing with a species engineered for war. These capabilities suggest biological weapons development on a scale we have never encountered. The human delegation exchanged glances. The woman, Amy Rodriguez, stood up slowly. "Excuse me," she said in a calm voice that needed no translation device. "May I speak?" The hall fell silent. All eyes turned to the human who stood without any protection, in an environment that required life support for everyone else. "I think there might be some confusion here," Amy said. "We're not biological weapons. We're just people. We come from a planet called Earth, and we're pretty normal there." Normal. The word hung in the air like a challenge to everything the Senate thought they knew about life in the universe. Senator Vexnine's mechanical voice responded. "Ambassador Rodriguez, our reports indicate that your species can survive in environments that would kill any other known life form within minutes. This is not normal by any definition we understand." Amy looked genuinely confused. "I'm sorry, but I think your information might be wrong. Those worlds you mentioned are actually pretty nice. Good air, decent weather, plenty of room to spread out. We chose them because they reminded us of home." The silence that followed was deafening. The only sounds were the hums and clicks of life support systems, keeping hundreds of beings alive in conditions that humans found comfortable. Dr. Zix Vel stepped forward again. "Ambassador, perhaps you could help us understand. What are the environmental conditions on your homeworld?" Amy smiled. "Earth? Well, it's got about 21% oxygen in the atmosphere, which is pretty standard. Temperature ranges from maybe -40 to 50 degrees Celsius, depending on the season and location. We've got some bacteria and viruses that keep our immune systems busy. Weather can be interesting. Storms, hurricanes, tornadoes, that sort of thing. Nothing too crazy." Every being in the room made mental notes. 50-degree temperature swings. Biological agents. Violent weather patterns. This was what humans called normal. "The gravity is about 1 g," Amy continued. "Radiation from our sun is manageable. We've got some predators. Lions, bears, sharks. But they're not too bad if you're careful. Pretty standard stuff for a life-bearing world, I'd think." The Senate members looked at each other in growing alarm. What the humans described as a pleasant, normal world sounded like a death trap to every other species represented. "I think," said Amy, looking around the room at all the environmental suits and breathing apparatus, "the real question might be how all of you managed to survive in such gentle conditions. Don't you find space stations like this a bit soft?" The emergency session was called to recess as Senate members retreated to their private chambers to contact their homeworlds. The human delegation remained in the gallery, chatting quietly among themselves and sharing snacks from small bags not outside the Great Hall. Urgent messages flew across the galaxy. Military advisors were awakened. Emergency protocols were activated. Defense budgets were reviewed. And in the quiet of the observer section, Amy Rodriguez went back to reading her book while her colleague finished his coffee. Neither of them understood why everyone seemed so upset about humans living on a few nice, quiet worlds that reminded them of home. Dr. Zix Vel had seen many worlds in his career as the Senate's chief investigator. Frozen ice balls where nothing could live. Gas giants that would crush a ship like paper. Desert planets where the sand would strip flesh from bone. But as his research vessel approached New Texas, he felt fear like never before. The planet below looked beautiful from space. Blue oceans, white clouds, green and brown continents. It looked peaceful. It looked normal. That was what made it so terrifying. "Sir," said his assistant, Kreetel, through the communication system in her environmental suit, "the atmospheric readings are confirmed. Sulfur dioxide levels at 12%, hydrogen sulfide at 4%, methane at 8%. This should be completely uninhabitable." Zixvel checked his own readings through his suit's display. The numbers were right. The air on New Texas would dissolve the breathing organs of most species in minutes. The acidity would eat through standard protective equipment. Yet humans had been living here for 5 years. "Prepare the full hazmat protocol," he ordered. "Triple redundancy on all systems. I want backup suits ready and the medical bay on standby." The shuttle landed at New Texas Colony's main settlement with all possible precautions. The investigation team wore the most advanced protective suits the Senate could provide. Each suit had its own air supply, radiation shielding, chemical filters, and emergency backup systems. They moved carefully, checking their equipment every few steps. Ben Carter was waiting for them at the landing pad. He wore blue jeans, a white t-shirt, and work boots. Nothing else. No helmet, no breathing gear, no protective clothing of any kind. He was holding a cup of coffee and smiled as the investigation team approached. "Welcome to New Texas," Ben said cheerfully. "Hope you folks had a good trip. Beautiful day today, isn't it? Beautiful day." The instruments on Zixvel's suit were screaming warnings about toxic gases, dangerous radiation, and atmospheric conditions that violated every safety protocol he knew. But the human called it beautiful. "I am Dr. Zixvel," he said through his suit's speaker system. "I lead this investigation team for the Galactic Senate. We are here to study how your people survive in these conditions." Ben nodded. "Sure thing, Doc. Happy to help. Want some coffee?" "Just made a fresh pot." The offer to consume an unknown liquid in this toxic environment made Zixvel's safety systems flash red warnings. "That will not be necessary," he said quickly. Ben shrugged. "Suit yourself. Pun intended." He laughed at his own joke while the investigation team ran emergency checks on their equipment. The tour began at the colony's main street. Human children ran and played in the open air, breathing the toxic atmosphere like it was nothing. Their parents sat on porches, talking and laughing, while the wind carried poison gases that would kill most life forms. "This is our school," Ben said, pointing to a simple building. "Kids love it here. Plenty of fresh air, nice weather most days. Sometimes we get acid rain, but that's good for the gardens." Acid rain was good for gardens. Zixvel made careful notes while his suit's systems worked overtime to keep him alive. They visited the mining operation next. Human workers went deep underground without breathing equipment. The caves were filled with gases that would cause immediate organ failure in most species. The miners sang songs while they worked, their voices echoing through tunnels that should have been death traps. "Good work down there," Ben explained. "The air's a bit thick, but nothing our folks can't handle. We've got some of the best miners in human space working these caves. Thick air." That was how humans described an atmosphere that would dissolve Tyrellian shells in minutes dot at the agricultural center, Dr. Kate Wilson showed them around the farms. She was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes, wearing a simple dress and gardening gloves. She looked like someone's grandmother, not a being capable of surviving in impossible conditions. "We grow most of our own food," Kate explained as they walked between rows of plants. "The soil here is wonderful, very rich. The rain helps too, though it's a bit more acidic than back on Earth." A bit more acidic. Zixvel's instruments showed acid levels that would eat through his suit's outer layer in hours. "How do you do it?" he finally asked through his speaker. How do your people survive here? Kate looked confused. Survive? Oh, we're not just surviving, we're thriving. This is a lovely place to live. Good air, nice weather, plenty of room for everyone. Much quieter than the crowded worlds closer to Earth. She knelt down and picked up a handful of soil that would burn through most organic matter. She let it run through her fingers like it was perfectly normal dirt. The secret, I suppose, Kate said, is that we humans are pretty adaptable. We come from a world that taught us to be flexible. Earth can be a challenging place sometimes. Challenging? That was the word she used for the death world that had produced these impossible beings. The investigation team documented everything. Children playing in radiation that would require evacuation protocols for any other species. Adults working in chemical concentrations that exceeded every safety standard. Families having picnics beside lakes of acid that would melt through their protective equipment. Sir, Freetel whispered through the private communication channel, I'm reading their life signs. Heart rate, breathing, body temperature, all completely normal. They show no signs of distress at all. That was the most frightening discovery of all. The humans weren't struggling to survive in this toxic environment. They were comfortable. They were happy. They were home. Evening came, and Ben invited the investigation team to dinner. The humans gathered in a community center, sharing food and conversation, while their guests sat in the corner, sealed in their protective suits. You folks sure you don't want to try some of our local cooking? Asked an elderly man named Pete. My wife makes the best stew in the colony. The offer to eat food prepared in a toxic environment made every alarm in Zixvel's suit activate at once. We have our own nutritional supplies, he managed to say. Pete nodded. Fair enough. You travelers probably have special dietary needs. We understand. Special dietary needs. Like requiring food that wouldn't dissolve their internal organs. During dinner, the humans talked about normal things. The weather, which they described as pleasant despite readings that indicated dangerous chemical storms. Their work, which they enjoyed despite laboring in conditions that would require hazmat protocols anywhere else. Their families, their hopes, their dreams, they seemed like ordinary people living ordinary lives. Except they were doing it in an environment that should have killed them all within minutes of arrival. As night fell, Zixvel retreated to his shuttle to compile his report. The numbers didn't make sense. The observations defied explanation. According to every scientific principle he knew, the humans of New Texas should be dead. Instead, they were thriving. Sir, Cretel said as she helped him process the data. What? Do we tell the Senate? Zixvel looked out the shuttle window at the colony. Lights glowed in windows where families were settling in for the night. Children were being tucked into bed in an atmosphere that would kill most life forms. Parents were reading bedtime stories in an environment that violated every safety protocol in the galaxy. We tell them the truth, he said finally. The humans are not struggling to survive here. They're not using advanced technology or secret weapons. They're just living their lives like this is completely normal. He paused, looking at his notes. And perhaps that's the most terrifying thing of all. The shuttle's communication array crackled to life as urgent messages began streaming toward Harmony Prime. Emergency reports, priority alerts, data that would keep the Senate's military advisors awake for weeks. Outside, Ben Carter walked his dog through the toxic night air, whistling a tune and enjoying what he would later describe to his wife as a beautiful evening. The Great Hall of Harmony Prime had never seen chaos like this. Representatives from across the galaxy spoke at once, their voices mixing through translation systems into a storm of fear and confusion. Environmental suits clicked and hummed as nervous beings checked their life support systems again and again. Senator Vex 9 stood at the central podium, his mechanical voice cutting through the noise. Order. We must have order. The hall slowly quieted, but the tension remained thick as poison gas. The investigation reports from New Texas have been distributed to all members, Vex 9 announced. I will now open the floor for discussion. The Altarian representative, Lisa Zara, was first to speak. Her graceful form swayed as she adjusted her atmospheric regulator. The implications are clear, she said, her voice flowing like music through the translation system. We face a species that can survive anywhere. Our traditional concepts of inhabitable space mean nothing to them. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. The Turellian delegate's shell clicked nervously. If humans can live on any world, how do we negotiate territory agreements? How do we maintain boundaries? They could simply ignore our borders and settle wherever they choose. General Corvex from the Zarathan Military Command stepped forward. His breathing apparatus hissed as he spoke. The strategic implications are devastating. Traditional military doctrine assumes environmental limitations. Blockades work because enemies cannot survive on uninhabitable worlds. But humans appear to have no such limitations. The hall erupted again. Representatives shouted concerns through their communication systems. The hive mind collective speaker drones buzzed with agitation between cycles of their breathing apparatus. Economic warfare becomes meaningless, declared the trade representative from the Zephyrian Empire. We control resources by controlling the worlds where they can be safely extracted. But if humans can work in any environment, they have access to resources we cannot even approach. Ambassador Thysis from the Crystalline Confederacy rose, her crystal body ringing like broken glass. Perhaps we are approaching this wrong. These are not natural capabilities. No species evolves such extreme adaptations without cause. This suggests deliberate biological engineering, weapons development. The word weapons sent a chill through the assembly. Every being present had heard stories of biological warfare, but nothing on this scale. The ability to survive anywhere was the ultimate military advantage. Dr. Zix Vel activated his communication system from the investigators section. The humans showed no signs of artificial enhancement, he reported. Their biological readings appeared completely natural. If this is engineering, it is beyond our ability to detect. Which makes it even more dangerous, General Corvex replied. Advanced bioweapons are designed to appear natural. The fact that we cannot detect the modifications proves how sophisticated their technology must be. The paranoia spread like a disease through the assembly. Representatives who had never agreed on anything suddenly found common ground in their fear of humanity. Senator Rithnell from the outer colonies spoke next. I have received reports from our frontier worlds. Human ships have been seen surveying systems we marked as uninhabitable. Dead worlds, toxic worlds, worlds where our scouts died despite full protective gear. The humans examine these places like they are looking for vacation homes. The casual way humans approached deadly environments was somehow more frightening than any military threat. What if they are already among us? Whispered Representative Cleator from the inner systems. What if some humans have infiltrated our worlds, pretending to need life support when they could survive without it? They could be anywhere, watching, waiting. The security chief for Harmony Prime activated his emergency protocols. Additional guards in environmental suits began patrolling the halls. Sensor sweeps checked for any signs of unprotected beings who might be hidden humans. We must consider quarantine measures, declared Senator Thysis. Human expansion must be contained before they become too powerful to stop. We have the advantage of numbers now, but if they can settle any world, the implication hung in the air like toxic gas. Humans could potentially outnumber every other species combined if they had access to all the worlds others considered uninhabitable. Military advisors presented worst-case scenarios on the main display. Star maps showed human expansion routes that ignored all traditional limitations. Economic models predicted the collapse of interstellar trade as humans gained access to previously impossible resource extraction sites. Population projections showed humanity spreading across the galaxy like a plague. Biological warfare protocols must be activated, General Korvax announced. If they can survive anything, they might be immune to our defensive weapons as well. We need to develop new countermeasures immediately. The hall buzzed with urgent planning. Defense budgets were discussed. Emergency alliances were proposed. Some representatives whispered about preemptive strikes, while others debated the ethics of xenocide. Through it all, Ambassador Krixtal from the Zephyrian Empire sat quietly in her environmental suit, listening to the growing hysteria. She had been in politics long enough to recognize when fear was driving decisions instead of logic. "Fellow senators," she finally said, activating her communication system. "Perhaps we should speak with the humans before we decide they are our enemies." The hall fell silent. All eyes turned to the observer section, where the human diplomatic team sat comfortably in their simple clothes. Amy Rodriguez was reading again, occasionally sipping from a water bottle. Her colleague was making notes on a tablet computer. Neither seemed concerned about the military planning happening around them. "They are here," Krixtal continued. "They have been listening to everything we have said. If they were biological weapons designed for conquest, would they sit quietly while we plan their containment?" Senator Vex-9's mechanical voice responded. "Perhaps they are gathering intelligence, studying our weaknesses. Or perhaps," Krixtal suggested, "they are simply wondering why we are all so frightened of people who grow vegetables and raise children on worlds with bad air." The observation hit like a physical blow. The humans of New Texas had not been building weapons or military bases. They had been farming, raising families, living normal lives in impossible conditions. "It makes them no less dangerous," General Korvax insisted. "Their capabilities remain the same, regardless of their current activities." Dr. Mex Ving from the Scientific Council activated her communication system. "I have been reviewing the biological data from New Texas. The humans show signs of stress adaptation consistent with evolution on a high-pressure environment. Their homeworld may simply be more challenging than we assumed." "Impossible," declared Dr. Zixvel. "No world could be that hostile and still support complex life. Unless," Dr. Mex Ving continued, "we have been thinking about this backwards. What if Earth is not unusual? What if our worlds are the exception?" The suggestion was horrifying to contemplate. Every species in the Senate had evolved on worlds they considered normal. Comfortable temperatures, breathable atmospheres, manageable radiation levels. The idea that these conditions might be unusually gentle was difficult to accept. "The humans call Earth a garden world," Dr. Mex Ving noted, reading from her datapad. "They describe it as beautiful, peaceful, and welcoming to life. Yet their planet appears to have environmental conditions that would challenge our most extreme survival protocols." The hall buzzed with confused discussion. If humans considered their death world a garden, what did that say about their perspective on the rest of the galaxy? "Motion to interview the human delegation," Krixtal announced. "Before we make decisions based on fear, we should gather facts." The motion was seconded by several representatives, but others objected. The debate raged for hours as beings in environmental suits argued about the wisdom of talking to the biological weapons that might not be weapons at all. Finally, Senator Vex-9 called for order. "The motion carries. We will invite the human delegation to address the Senate tomorrow. Security protocols will remain in effect." As the session ended, representatives filed out of the hall in their various life support systems. Emergency meetings were scheduled. Military advisors were briefed. Emergency protocols remained active. In the observer section, Amy Rodriguez closed her book and stood up. She walked over to the railing and looked down at the senators, still discussing humans like they were dangerous predators. "Excuse me," she called out in her clear voice. "I couldn't help but overhear some of your concerns. Would it help if I answered a few questions now?" The remaining senators looked up at the human woman standing casually in an environment that required life support for everyone else. She looked tired, like someone who had been traveling for a long time and just wanted to go home. "We're really not that scary," Amy said with a small smile. "We're just people from a world that taught you to be tough." Captain Jake Murphy had seen many strange things in his years flying diplomatic missions, but nothing quite like this. His ship, the Dawn's Edge, was surrounded by security vessels as it approached Harmony Prime. Scanner beams swept over his hull every few seconds, searching for weapons that did not exist. "This is Dawn's Edge requesting docking clearance," Jake said into his communication system. "Dawn's Edge, you are cleared for Bay 7. Warning, full quarantine protocols are in effect. Prepare for biological contamination screening." Jake looked at his crew. Navigator Lisa Park was eating an apple while reading star charts. Engineer Tony Blake was fixing a coffee maker that had been making weird noises. They looked like the most dangerous biological weapons in the galaxy. "Biological contamination screening?" Lisa asked, not looking up from her charts. "What do they? Think we have space flu?" The docking procedure took 3 hours instead of the usual 30 minutes. Every system on Dawn's Edge was scanned, tested, and analyzed. The crew had to provide biological samples, medical records, and detailed information about everywhere they had been in the past year. When they finally stepped off their ship, they were met by a security team in full environmental suits. The guards carried weapons designed for containing biological hazards. Behind them, medical teams waited with equipment Jake did not recognize. "Welcome to Harmony Prime," said the security chief through his suit speaker. "I am Commander Veltix. You will submit to full decontamination procedures before entering the station proper." Jake and his crew exchanged glances. They wore their standard uniforms, simple blue shirts, black pants, and comfortable boots. No protective gear, no breathing apparatus, no environmental suits. Decontamination from what? Jake asked. "Biological agents that may pose a threat to station inhabitants." Commander Veltix replied, "Standard protocol for beings from high-risk environments." High-risk environments. Jake supposed Earth might qualify, though he had never thought of his homeworld that way. The decontamination process involved walking through chambers filled with various lights, sprays, and scanning devices. The crew submitted to it patiently, though Tony muttered something about feeling like a piece of fruit being washed. Finally, they were escorted to their quarters. The hallways were empty except for security personnel. Jake noticed that every guard was sealed in protective equipment, while he and his crew walked comfortably in the station's normal atmosphere. "Captain Murphy," Commander Veltix said as they reached the guest quarters, "you and your crew are restricted to this section until your Senate testimony. For your safety and the safety of others, their safety." Jake wondered if the guards were more worried about protecting the humans or protecting everyone else from the humans. The next morning, Jake was summoned to give testimony before the full Senate. Walking into the Great Hall was like entering an alien zoo. Hundreds of beings in environmental suits filled the chamber, their life support systems humming and clicking like mechanical insects. Senator Vex 9 spoke first. "Captain Murphy, you have been called to explain how your species can survive in environments that would be lethal to any other known life form." Jake looked around the hall. Every being present was sealed in protective equipment, breathing filtered air, monitoring their environmental controls. He stood at the witness podium wearing his dress uniform and nothing else. "Well," Jake said, "I guess we're just used to rougher conditions than most folks." Rougher conditions. The translation systems carried his words across the hall, and Jake could almost feel the fear that followed. "Captain," said Dr. Zixfeld from the investigators section, "our observations on New Texas showed your people living in atmospheric conditions that would cause immediate organ failure in most species. How do you explain this?" Jake thought about it. New Texas was a nice place. Good air, decent weather, plenty of room to spread out. "I'm not sure what needs explaining, Doc. It's a pleasant world. Maybe a bit humid, but nothing too bad." Pleasant, humid. The Senate members looked at each other through their protective visors. "General," Corvex activated his communication system. "Captain, are you saying your species requires no protective equipment to survive on worlds we classify as uninhabitable? Protective equipment for what?" Jake asked. "If the air's good and the weather's decent, why would we need gear?" Dr. Mexfeng from the Scientific Council spoke up. "Captain, could you describe the environmental conditions on your homeworld?" Jake smiled, thinking of Earth. Beautiful place. We've got oceans, mountains, forests, deserts. Weather can be interesting. Storms, snow, heat waves, that sort of thing. Nothing too crazy. Temperature ranges from maybe 40 below to 50 above Celsius, depending on where you are and what season it is. He paused, noticing the uncomfortable shifting in the audience. "We've got some wildlife that keeps things exciting. Bears, sharks, poisonous snakes, that kind of thing. The usual predators you'd expect on any life-bearing world." The usual predators. Jake was describing nightmare creatures like they were friendly neighbors. "The gravity's about 1 g," he continued. "Radiation from our sun is manageable if you use common sense. We've got bacteria and viruses that keep our immune systems working, but nothing too serious if you take care of yourself." Ambassador Theises from the Crystalline Confederacy spoke through her translation device. "Captain, what you describe sounds like what we would classify as a death world. How did your species survive to develop civilization?" Jake looked confused. "Death world? Earth's not that bad. Sure, it can be challenging sometimes, but that's just life, right? You adapt. You get stronger. You learn to deal with whatever comes your way. You adapt, you get stronger." The words that humans used casually were military doctrine to everyone else. "Can you give us an example of adaptation?" Dr. Zixfeld asked. Jake thought for a moment. "Well, when I was a kid, we had a flu outbreak in my town. Made everyone pretty sick for a week or two, but we got through it, built up immunity. Made us tougher for the next time." The Senate members were taking frantic notes. A disease outbreak that merely made humans pretty sick would probably devastate entire populations of most other species. Or there was the time our colony ship lost life support on the way to Alpha Centauri, Jake continued. Emergency protocols failed. We had to make do with backup systems for 3 months. Wasn't fun, but we managed. Managed. The humans had survived for 3 months in conditions that would kill most beings in hours. Engineer Tony Blake was called to demonstrate human durability. He volunteered cheerfully, walking to the center of the hall where scientific equipment had been set up. "What do you need me to do?" Tony asked the nervous researchers. Dr. Zixfeld approached carefully in his full protective suit. "We would like to test your tolerance for various environmental conditions." "Nothing dangerous," he added quickly. The first test involved breathing air with oxygen levels that would cause immediate unconsciousness in most species. Tony breathed normally and asked if they wanted him to hold his breath or something. They Second test exposed him to temperature ranges that would require emergency medical intervention for any other being. Tony commented that it felt like a nice spring day back home. The third test involved exposure to radiation levels that would trigger evacuation protocols across the galaxy. Tony asked if they were actually doing anything yet, because he couldn't feel any difference. Throughout the tests, Tony maintained casual conversation with the terrified researchers. He asked about their homeworlds, their families, their work. He seemed genuinely interested in learning about other species, even while proving he could survive in conditions that would kill them. How do you do it? Dr. Zixvel finally asked. How does your body handle these conditions? Tony shrugged. I guess we're just built for it. Earth taught us to be tough. You have to be strong to survive there. Built for it. Taught to be tough. Have to be strong to survive. The humans were describing their homeworld like a military training facility designed to produce super soldiers. Captain Murphy, Senator Vex 9 said when the tests were complete, do you understand why the Senate is concerned about your species' capabilities? Jake looked around the hall at hundreds of beings sealed in protective equipment, afraid to breathe the same air he found comfortable. For the first time, he began to understand the fear he was seeing. I think I'm starting to get it, he said slowly. You're scared of us because we can survive in places you can't. The simple statement hung in the air like a weapon. But here's the thing, Jake continued. We're not looking for trouble. We're not trying to take over anyone's worlds. We just want to find nice places where we can build homes and raise our kids. Places that remind us of Earth. Nice places. The humans considered toxic death worlds to be nice places that reminded them of home. The colonies we've built are on worlds you folks don't want anyway, Jake explained. Empty places. Unused places. We're not taking anything from anyone. Amy. Rodriguez stood up in the diplomatic section. If I may add something, Captain Murphy? Jake nodded. The Senate seems to think we're some kind of weapons, Amy said. But we're not. We're refugees. Refugees. That was not the word anyone had been expecting. Earth is getting crowded, Amy explained. We need room to grow. New places to build. Communities. The worlds we've settled are actually more comfortable for us than most. Dr. Kate Wilson arrived at Harmony Prime 3 days after Captain Murphy's testimony. Her small shuttle looked tiny next to the massive military vessels surrounding the station. Security scanners swept over her ship with the same intensity they had shown the diplomatic mission, but Kate seemed unbothered by the attention. She carried a single bag and wore a simple dress that looked like something a retired teacher might choose for traveling, which, in many ways, was exactly what she was. Kate had been a biology professor on Earth before joining the new Texas colony as their chief medical officer. Dr. Wilson, Commander Veltix greeted her at the docking bay. Welcome to Harmony Prime. I must ask you to submit to our standard decontamination procedures. Kate smiled kindly. Of course, dear. Though I should mention, I brought some cookies for the Senate members. I hope your procedures won't damage them. Cookies. The human doctor had brought baked goods to what the galaxy considered a crisis meeting. About biological weapons. The decontamination process was thorough, but Kate endured it patiently. She even thanked the technicians for their careful work. When it was finished, she was escorted to the Great Hall where the Senate had reconvened to hear her scientific testimony. The hall was packed with representatives in their environmental suits. News of the human testimony had spread across the galaxy, and every species wanted to understand what they were dealing with. Military advisors filled the observer sections. Scientists crowded the research areas. Even the press corps was present, their recording equipment protected behind blast shields. Dr. Kate Wilson walked to the witness podium, carrying her bag and looking completely comfortable in an environment that required life support for everyone else. She set her bag down carefully and smiled at the assembly. "Good morning, everyone," she said in a voice that needed no translation device. "Thank you for inviting me to speak with you today." Senator Vex 9 activated his communication system. "Dr. Wilson, you have been called to provide scientific explanation for your species' apparent immunity to environmental conditions that would be fatal to other life forms." Kate nodded. "I'll do my best to help you understand, though I should start by saying that humans aren't immune to anything. We just come from a world that taught us to be adaptable." She opened her bag and pulled out a datapad along with a small container. "I brought some samples and research data that might help explain things." Dr. Zixvel spoke from the investigators section. "Dr. Wilson, our observations suggest that humans can survive exposure to toxins, radiation, temperature extremes, and atmospheric conditions that would kill any other known species within minutes." "That's not quite accurate," Kate said gently. "We can't survive everything. We just have broader tolerance ranges than you might expect." She activated her datapad and gestured to the main display screen. "Let me show you some comparative biology data." Charts and graphs appeared on the screen, showing biological readings from various species. The human data stood out like a red flag among the others. "Now, I know these numbers look extreme," Kate continued, "but they make sense when you understand where we come from." She brought up an image of Earth from space. It looked beautiful, blue and white and green, peaceful and inviting. "This is our homeworld," Kate said with obvious affection. "Isn't she lovely?" The assembled representatives looked at the image with confusion. It appeared to be a normal, habitable world. "The first thing you have to understand about Earth," Kate explained, "is that it's what we call a high-energy environment. Everything there is constantly trying to kill you in small, manageable ways." She brought up atmospheric data for Earth. The numbers made several representatives check their life support systems nervously. "Our atmosphere contains aggressive oxidizers that would be toxic to many species," Kate noted. "The oxygen levels would cause cellular damage in beings not adapted to them. But for us, breathing is automatic. We learn to process these chemicals safely." Dr. Mexfeng from the Scientific Council activated her communication system. "Dr. Wilson, are you saying your species evolved defensive mechanisms against your own atmosphere?" "Not defensive," Kate corrected. "Adaptive. We learned to use what Earth gave us. The oxygen that would poison you makes us stronger. The radiation that would kill you helps our bodies produce essential nutrients. The temperature swings that would shock your systems keep us flexible." She brought up microscopic images of human cells. "Look at these cellular structures. See how dense they are? How much redundancy there is? That's because Earth taught us that backup systems are essential for survival." The images showed cellular complexity that exceeded anything in the Senate's biological databases. "We have multiple organ systems for critical functions," Kate continued. "Redundant immune responses, cellular repair mechanisms that activate under stress, emergency metabolic pathways that engage during crisis situations." General Corvex spoke from the military section. "Dr. Wilson, these adaptations sound like biological weapons development." Kate laughed, a warm sound that seemed strange in the tense atmosphere of the hall. "Oh my, no. These are just the minimum requirements for surviving childhood on Earth." Surviving childhood. The casual reference to human development as a survival challenge horrified the assembly. "Let me show you what I mean," Kate said, bringing up more data. "Human children are exposed to thousands of different pathogens during normal development. Viruses, bacteria, parasites, toxins from plants and animals. This would kill most young from other species." She paused, looking around at the protected representatives. "But for human children, it's just growing up. Their immune systems learn and adapt. They become stronger with each challenge. Ambassador Theises from the Crystalline Confederacy spoke through her translation device. Dr. Wilson, you describe your homeworld as if it were designed to produce warriors. Not warriors, Kate corrected gently. Survivors. Earth doesn't care. If you're planning to fight anyone, it just demands that you be tough enough to handle whatever it throws at you. She brought up weather data from Earth, storm systems, temperature variations, seasonal changes that would require emergency protocols. On most worlds, our weather alone would be classified as hostile by galactic standards, Kate noted. Hurricanes, tornadoes, blizzards, heat waves, floods, droughts. Sometimes all in the same year, in the same region. Dr. Zixvel activated his communication system. How does any complex civilization develop under such conditions? Cooperation, Kate said simply. When the environment is challenging, you learn to work together. You share resources. You help your neighbors. You build communities that can weather any storm. She brought up images of human cities, towns, and colonies. They looked remarkably peaceful for settlements built by beings adapted for survival in impossible conditions. The same traits that help us survive hostile environments also make us good at building stable societies, Kate explained. We're used to planning for disasters. We're experienced at sharing limited resources. We know how to work together when things get difficult. Senator Krix-Tal from the Zephyrian Empire activated her communication system. Dr. Wilson, if humans are so well adapted for survival, why do you settle on worlds others cannot use? Why not take the best planets? Kate opened the small container she had brought and pulled out what looked like a simple cookie. May I use this as an example? She held up the cookie. This was baked on New Texas using local ingredients. Flour grown in soil that would burn through most protective equipment. Water from lakes that would dissolve standard materials. Salt from oceans that are essentially acid baths. The representatives watched nervously as Kate took a bite of the cookie. Delicious, she said, chewing thoughtfully. Just like the ones my grandmother used to make back on Earth. But if I offered this to any of you, it would probably kill you. The stark demonstration made her point clearly. We don't take your worlds because they don't suit us, Kate continued. Your carefully controlled environments feel artificial to us. We need real weather, real air, real challenges to feel comfortable. She brought up images from New Texas, showing families enjoying picnics in conditions that would require hazmat protocols for other species. What you see as hostile environments, we see as home, Kate explained. Places where we can breathe freely, where our children can grow up strong, where we can build communities that feel natural to us. Ben Carter's voice came through the communication system from New Texas. Kate had arranged for him to participate by video link. Dr. Wilson is right, Ben said, his image appearing on the main screen. He was standing in his garden, surrounded by plants growing in toxic soil under a corrosive sky. We chose New Texas because it reminds us of the farm country back on Earth. Good soil, clean air, plenty of room for everyone. Clean air. Toxic gases that would kill most life forms in minutes. We're what humans considered clean air. We're not trying to expand into anyone's territory, Ben continued. We're just looking for empty places where we can build good lives for our families. Places that feel like home. Dr. Kate Wilson nodded. That's the key to understanding humans. We're not invaders or weapons. We're refugees from a world that demanded we be strong, looking for places where we can use that strength to build something peaceful. She brought up population data and colony reports. Every human settlement